Welcome to another edition of Bring in the Closers. Ben, we've made it to episode 10, I believe. We have done it. Let's big round of applause there. It's a big day for us.
Whew.
Might be the last episode. We'll see how
it was close. I don't know. It was close.
There was a point last Thursday at 9:50-ish. No, 10:50. Yeah, it was.
Didn't look good.
It
did not look good.
It didn't look good between recordings, but we persevered through, and it was. It is what it is. My contract says I have to do at least 10, so I've fulfilled my portion. I hit record. I've done the things that have been asked of me. You, of course, have showed up and going to impart your infinite wisdom on us once again. And we have a guest we're going to bring on here in just a second. So it should be a good episode. I before we get to the guest, I was gonna ask you. You're moving, as you talked about on the show, and haven't quite moved yet, but you're in the process, packing and stuff like that. And you're moving to the Midland Odessa region. I don't know which mansion you bought. I haven't looked to see what's available on Zillow, but you'll be moving to that area soon enough. You are someone who likes where you're at in Colorado, and you're making this sacrifice for business. Just walk me through from your standpoint, and I can kind of walk you through at a high level my standpoint of why I am where I'm in Texas. And I'm curious, was it a hard decision? Was it a decision that you felt like you had to make? Was there certain market factors? Maybe if it's personal, I'm getting personal reasons, but just some of the things that led to you saying, you know what, I just have to be closer to the action.
Colorado, so I was in Midland, 2014, got down there in like April and was there basically every day, working most days and really grinding out on a couple of tough projects for about, 4 years straight. And at that point, I just kind of wanted a break and wanted to kind of pull back a little bit. And so I had closed a couple of deals that allowed me, a little bit of a base so that I didn't have to be, working as hard. Wasn't having to work for the next paycheck, so to speak. And so that allowed me to take a little bit of a breather. And so I actually spent about a month in Las Vegas last summer and just kind of decompressing. And then I moved up to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and that was never a permanent move for me. That was always just kind of I needed a little bit to reset and was still focused on what I was doing. And the reality is, I'm only a flight away, or I'm only a 8 or 9 hour car ride away, right? And so but it's gotten to the point now where I kind of got the time away that I needed. Believe it or not, for the people listening, you'll understand this for sure. I've started to miss Midland. There's a part of me that's certainly looking forward to getting back. But the reality is that that's where the action is. And so, what I tell people when they ask me about Midland is that it's a tough place to make. It's a great place to make a living, but it's a tough place to make a life. And I think that's really true. I mean, it's one of those places. But it is what it is. And so, come November, I'll be there full time. I've been spending about a week or two a month there for the last year straight, but have been my kind of quote unquote home base has been Colorado, but I'll be in Midland full time.
I hate to call you a liar, but let's be honest here. You didn't talk about moving to Midland until you started, meeting real important people in your life. So, it's fine. You didn't have to get into that today. That's okay. It's, but it's interesting. One of the things I learned when I was in Louisiana, where I lived most of my life, it was during the downturn, I would go meet with clients. It was really hard because even though you are a plane flight or 4, 5, 6, 8 hour drive away, there is something to the fact of the comfort of being right there, being the, hey, let's go get lunch, compared to let me plan out a trip. And it's changed the perception with people I've done business with is that I'm in Texas now, and DFW, obviously I can go get lunch, breakfast, dinner. Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, but it's changed the perception, whereas, maybe it was a 4-hour drive, which I would be happy to drive to go eat lunch with someone. Just being nearby has really shifted the focus, and people treat you differently because you are closer. And I'm curious, our guest who does not live in Texas, I'm curious, we'll ask him about that in a second, how he's dealt with that. But it does seem that when you are close to folks, that it does kind of just change something, even if you still talk to them on the phone.
Yeah, and to be fair, I tell people that I live in Midland, and you're the first person that has publicized that I even have a home base outside of Midland, because for the lack of better words, I do have a home base in Midland because
Yeah,
I'm there
you do.
so often and so
Right.
much. And so functionally, it does. It's, yes, I'm in Colorado some part of the month, but it's not as though I'm offline and out of touch. I still firmly do have boots on the ground there, and so my network is there, and so it's not as though I am an outsider. But I've just been, but I'm making a transition to having boots on the ground there 100% of the time instead of just most of the time.
Okay. And before we get into our guest, let's a couple of programming notes. Ben will be off the show for a couple of weeks here in October, I believe, right? You will miss a couple of weeks. And then I have an
That's
episode
correct.
I will miss in November. So we will probably host the show solo with a guest, but we haven't worked that out, just to let the listeners know. With that being said, let's go ahead and bring in our guest, who is Tim Kotzman, the president and CEO of Jubilee Royalty, coming to us from a spot that you don't think of as an oil and gas hub, which is New York, New York. And you were saying offline that you were by a historical landmark in New York City. Tim, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to have you on. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about it. First off, we were just talking as you were on hold there about dealing with folks that are far away. Obviously, New York City probably has a lot more oil and gas players than you realize, but it's also not Houston. So just walk us through that. And we'll get to who you are in a second. But just from that standpoint, I'm just curious: has it been an obstacle being up in the Northeast?
Sure. So add a little bit of color. I've been up here about 6 weeks now, so it hasn't been a year or longer. But it's been interesting to hear the reaction of people. Everyone seems to like to come to New York the same way that they like to go to Colorado. So it's been interesting that people from even other countries and people that are, raising money and looking at, just working through the C-suite of the industry, kind of mention, oh yeah, I'm in New York from time to time, or they're at least open to coming up to visit because you can kind of be a tourist and have a meeting. So it's been a positive reaction so far, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. So that is interesting, and I have some more questions on that. But first, let's kind of break down Jubilee Royalty. Who are you? How do you tie into the oil and gas space? What do you do? And then we'll kind of delve back in there. But since we were already on the topic, I want to get your take on it. So go ahead, kind of tell us a bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I'm from Central Pennsylvania originally, Carlisle to be specific, right between Hershey and just south of Hershey and Harrisburg, and got into the industry in 2008. Started doing, leasing and right away and seismic and mineral buying projects through a broker, and started a few mineral acquisition companies over the past 4 or 5 years, and just transitioned out of those in the Appalachian and Permian. And my wife and I have always wanted to live in New York. So we said, hey, now's the time. We're going to sign a 2-year lease and go up to New York, and kind of like moving home because a lot of our friends and family are about 3 hours south. So kind of similar to what Ben was saying as far as taking a little breather, and obviously still doing some business. So Jubilee is the next iteration as far as mineral buying and, delineating kind of where we want to go and working on more mineral deals.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when you go to a big city, there's obviously perception, and then there's from like a tourist standpoint, which is what I would be. I've never even been to New York City, but I would have a tourist perception, but there's also reality. When the reality is, I'm sure there's probably oil and gas players that are inside the city that are doing business and different, whether it's family firms or whatever that you would have access to by being there. So there is, while maybe there's some cons, if you will, from a perception standpoint, there's probably also some strengths, some networking that you can get done up there that you probably couldn't get done in Midland, Texas, or DFW area.
Sure, and I think just the reality that the world's kind of flat again with email and the different ways to connect and being able to jump on a flight and be wherever you need to be within a few hours to a day just makes a huge difference. And being in that mindset is totally different for me, starting off as someone that, you need to be in the field, staying in the hotel, all of those sorts of things. But no, it's pretty funny. My wife and I just went and had drinks in the one part of the lobby of the Plaza Hotel maybe a week ago. And the group of guys right behind us started talking about leases and what formation their leases went down to and drilling. And it was just hilarious. It's like you're in New York, which you think of as one of the financial capitals, but you don't think of it as oil and gas at all. In fact, when I'm in different places, I'll go to throw something away. Like, no, we recycle here. Save the oceans here. Put your bottle over here. And I'm like, I just kind of grin and bear it because it's totally different from obviously what I've been accustomed to over the past year when I was living in Fort Worth.
Yeah, it's a slight change there. You mentioned financials. One of the things that when you get to the mineral space is you find a lot of people who have a lot of money that are interested in the mineral space, and that's because the financials are. I hate to say the term unique. That's kind of overplayed, but they are what they are. In the sense that, even though most Americans either own minerals because of or involved in mineral ownership somehow because of they have some kind of property that they happen to get the minerals passed to them through that, or their family has minerals, or their buddy has minerals. Or internationally, obviously, that's not the case. But minerals, from the financial standpoint, is a pretty lucrative business, and it's one that I don't think until you see an oil and gas boom in your area, folks quite understand how it works, why it works. So, being that you're in the financial capital of the world, it does kind of resonate that you would see a lot of finance guys who are savvy understanding that this is actually a pretty lucrative opportunity for them.
For sure. And, just kind of reminded of walking around NAPE back in February and having one of the principals of a mineral fund say, we're doing okay, but we have a lot of, could be investors that are still sitting on the sidelines and they're interested in the space, but they're just not quite comfortable putting their money on the line yet. And so a lot of watchers, but not a lot of, just people just saying, hey, yeah, this sounds great. I'm just going to give you X amount, which, you get into some of the details from the mineral conference in Houston the day after Easter, where, you have, these are not exact numbers, but, $7 billion in private money and $7 billion in public money just allocated towards minerals. And, certainly a growing and advancing space, but not one that everyone's comfortable with yet, just because someone says, well, we can model it out and everything's going to be okay. So definitely an interesting time as you have, the sixth company going public, being Brigham there, the down on Wall Street a week or two ago. It's just kind of an interesting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, I'm curious, you and I spoke a little bit offline earlier this week, and one of the things that we talked about was that one of the things that you look at that as a kind of a precursor to a deal or to a new venture, or one of the things that you're looking at on how to bring a business to market is scalability and entry to market. Can you kind of give us a picture of given the current mineral market, what are some of the things that you would be looking at, or what are some of the market conditions that you've identified that would be maybe indicative of one way or another? Just kind of walk us through maybe a little bit of your thought process, just kind of how you approach something like today's market.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been blessed to be partnered with some capital partners that have been in the oil and gas space for a number of decades, and really were kind of not far off from the forefront of everything. But I kind of approach it from, you have to be willing to kind of do the dishes, so to speak. You need to be able to, organically source deals and then see what players are there, whether it's going through the records and seeing who's actively buying, or developing the relationships with, some of the publics, or as high up as you can get where they're willing to take a one-off deal, or if you have a little bit of funding behind you, 5 or 10 deals at a time that you're packaging up. So I think it's just, for me, willing to do kind of some of the groundwork and see what the landscape looks like on a basin by basin basis, and where an opportunity might be that, isn't on the front page of the newspaper. And, the Permian is, I think, a great example of where there's still a lot of opportunity, but you're definitely gonna have to spend a full-time effort to organically source deals and get them across the line. And so kind of just the thought that there's opportunity everywhere, but where can you go that it might be not easier, but if you're looking for, not everybody in the world to be there, but to be able to have outlets to to fund the deals, whether you're, if you're not funding them yourself, to have partners that you can go to.
Well, one of the questions I'm curious from your perspective is if you turn on oil and gas news, there is news that covers all kinds of stuff in the industry, whether it be price, whether it be environmental, whether it be just project based news. There's always forecasts on what the price is going to be, where the price is going, where demand's at, where demand growth is going, all this stuff. In the mineral space, obviously price is going to impact how much production there is. How do you balance that when you're sitting down, on a mineral deal and you're trying to advise a client, or you're maybe trying to pitch a client on what you think of a good prospect? How do you balance that out? Because there's so much information out there. Most of it's pretty much garbage, from my opinion, because it's a lot of guesswork. But how do you balance that out? Saying, Bloomberg saying this and IEA saying that, and you're asking people to put a lot of money. But if you have their trust, that you have to walk them through that process. So what is your kind of steps to say, hey, here's how we, to use Ben's term, cut through the noise and kind of get to where we think this is actually going to make money for us?
Sure. So I think the mindset that I try to stick with, and one of the guys that I've worked with quite a bit over the last couple of years by the name of Rob, he has a saying that, we're not looking for everyone. We're looking for those that believe the way we believe, just to the point that, if someone just does not want to sell their minerals and doesn't want to talk to you, then it's probably not going to be that long of a conversation. But with someone that is asking questions or is at least open to you making them an offer, it's showing them that, there are options out there available to you, especially if it's a larger deal where, it's not just the capital gains tax treatment versus ordinary income, but it's also, do they even know what a 1031 exchange is? Do they know what a deferred sales trust is? I mean, a lot of accountants don't even know what they probably know what a 1031 is. They don't know what a deferred sales trust is. And that's not for smaller deals, but just trying to really serve them and be of service to them, and hopefully be on the same page with them that the price of oil and gas, it's going to go up, it's going to go down. It's just a matter of when. And the example that I am thinking of right now is in the Eagle Ford. When the price went down to a certain point, people's royalty checks just stopped. And, that's kind of a message of, oh, wow, what am I doing here? Maybe these people that want to buy some of my minerals, maybe I should sell a quarter or half to diversify, because it's not just a sales pitch anymore. It's my entire revenue stream from my minerals in South Texas just got cut off because the price went too low for the operator to want to produce it. So I think it's just that middle road of, it's not that you should never sell your minerals, and it's not that everybody should sell their minerals, but having, hopefully a constructive conversation about it.
Well, real quick follow up. One of the things you said is that we try to find folks that believe the way we believe. And Ben and I have talked about this concept some on the show. I know a lot offline is that, sales are an important part of the deal making process because you are selling, but negotiating with strategic partners who have similar mindsets, that's really, from my standpoint, and I don't want to speak for Ben, but I think Ben would agree, that's where you want to be. You want to sit in a room with people who have the same objective of you, as you. They think similar to you. It doesn't mean you can put together every deal, but that's fundamentally different than saying, "Here's a pitch deck. Let me try to convince you to buy this." You can do it that way, but finding the right partners who have common values, common beliefs, common whatever it is, makes that process substantially easier. And I think a lot of people, when they're putting together deals, they're trying to sell, and they don't realize that. Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you can find partners who actually have, the shared beliefs, it makes the process a lot easier. It would seem.
For sure. Yeah, I'd totally agree with that.
So how do you go through this process of let's kind of, obviously no secret sauce unless you want to, that we'll take it. But how do you go through that process of kind of qualifying buyers, qualifying sellers, to try to maybe to call out the ones that okay, this person has a lot of money, but gosh, probably going to be more pain than what it's worth. How do you kind of work that out to where you are working with more partners versus trying to sell something to someone every single deal?
And I guess just to clarify, are you kind of thinking more on approaching a mineral owner who's considering selling, or are you talking about working with capital partners
Yeah, it could go either way. It could go either way because the capital partners would probably be a little bit different. So if you can take it from either side you like.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny the stories that you hear, and we could spend hours, if not days or weeks, on all of the war stories. But just being professional and knowing, what your strengths are. Do you have an agreement that? I mean, I've heard stories of, brokers, if you want to use that word, sending a deal on a napkin, so to speak, over to a fund, and it's just like, what are you even thinking? So I know you guys have covered that a little bit on this podcast before, but just having all the information there, being professional about it, but at the same time, are you really good at that business development end, or are you really good at sourcing deals and getting results out in the field with mineral owners, or is it both? So kind of a bigger picture as far as approaching it is just, do you have the running room to really maybe not scale a project? You may not want to build a project or a team of 5 or 10 or 50 people, but are you looking at 1 or 2 townships or counties, or are you looking at something bigger or smaller than that, so that you're not calling 5 people and thinking that 2 of them are going to, want to partner with you and sell half their minerals to you. So, I mean, just everything in that line of thought, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, Tim. You've not only had success on the mineral side, you run a couple of other firms, a couple of other companies. I'm curious from an operations standpoint. One of the things that Ryan and I have talked about on the podcast quite a bit is you're providing value where you can, and kind of for lack of a better phrase, delegating the rest, or finding the other pieces within your network. I'm curious kind of how you think about that that task or that piece of the puzzle in terms of, okay, so I have a business idea, or I want to get into X market, and what that looks like in terms of what you need to hit the green light. So just in terms of what it would take to to take an idea from, okay, so I have an idea, to, okay, now I have a business. What are some of the steps that you take, or what are some of the things that you're looking at?
I mean, again, it kind of goes back for me to knowing what your strengths are. At this point in my career, I think I can do kind of A to Z. I can do some business development. I can organically source some deals and kind of and make that happen. But probably a better example, going back 4 or 5 years ago, I partnered up with a gentleman that is just best in the world at business development. And I've, through a couple different industries, have always kind of been the let's detail oriented, let's make sure every box is checked, making sure everything gets done sort of person. And so when we partnered up, it was just like peanut butter and chocolate as far as the results that we saw in doing, north of $150 million worth of mineral acquisitions organically in about 4 years, which isn't a record, but, when you're doing small and medium sized deals, that's a lot of transactions. So, being able to find the right partners along the way, as you were saying, and I think I've seen examples of both someone that is really good at getting deals signed, so to speak, working with the mineral seller or prospective mineral seller, and just cannot get the deal to the closing line because of lack of something on, identifying a capital partner. And then, other people that walk around all day long and know everybody in the world, but maybe something in their personality or something in their just, they either don't find the partner or don't have the goods to bring to the market, so to speak, when they really should. So again, I think mindset along with knowing what your strengths are can go a long way, and being realistic. I mean, over the past 4 years, I can count on 2 fingers the amount of what I call big deals that we've gotten done, north of 15, 20, $30 million deals. And I think it's important, I've seen guys that, they just want to be on a day rate, and they're going to have that day rate forever. And they think all they're worth is $150 a day. And that's their personality. And then you have other guys that can't pay their light bill, but they're chasing all these $100 and $200 million deals. And it's just like, you would think common sense would allow for something in the middle. So just kind of having that realistic singles and doubles type approach of, I'm going to do the work that's involved and, kind of walk a mile, see a mile, but definitely put in the work that's involved. I'm scrolling through LinkedIn this morning and, see people on there kind of treating it like Facebook, complaining about how they can't find work and this, that, and the other. And it's just kind of almost back to what Ben was talking about at the top, as far as like, well, are you willing to drive to Midland and live in Midland and make it happen? Because if not, I don't know why you're just venting on social media.
Right.
And I don't mean that to sound hard, but it's kind of like, you're not entitled to a job. So
Right.
I'm not quite sure what besides venting their frustration, what they're thinking they're going to accomplish through that.
Right.
And then to that end, I mean, just people submitting resumes, you have people that might follow up once or twice, but I cannot remember, and there may have been one, but I can't remember anyone that's followed up with me 5 times. And I'm not saying to be, too aggressive or pesky or anything like that, but like if someone would follow up with me 5 times, I would try to do something for them. It might be referring them to someone. It might be at least giving them a response of like, hey, here's what I think you could do. But it's just, there's the people that want to talk about what they don't have, but they don't really want to go after it, at least not in my view.
No, I think there's a lot of wisdom on the Oil and Gas Contractors Connect. I just interviewed a guy who's a recruiter today. And one of the things I kind of left the show with saying was, it seems to me that if you're in our position, which is we all have gainful employment and are doing okay for ourselves, that you almost should have kind of a recruiter buddy that you can send when people say, hey, I need a job, if you're not hired, you can send them to the recruiter, and you kind of kill 2 birds with one stone. A, you helped your friend out because now they hopefully have a job. But B, you can also vet that recruiter. And if they're, if you send 3 or 4 people that person's way and they all hook them up with jobs, then when you need to actually hire someone, you can you've already reverse engineered the recruiting process. But all that is you're trying to bring value to people, you're trying to help people, but you're trying to solve this problem that you're talking about, Tim, and you're trying to think, maybe 2-3 steps ahead, going, eventually one day I might need to bring a recruiter in to help me. Here's a way to kind of solve that problem. Now, I don't know if I'll ever hire a recruiter for my business or not, but if I did, I've got a guy that I send people to, and so I can ask all those people how he treated them, what did he get the job done? So kind of thinking outside the box, how's a way to solve this problem? And to your point, people kind of get trapped into their mindset. But I do want to shift gears. One of the things that Ben and I have talked offline, I think on the podcast maybe, is that sometimes you're in a market and you think you have a pulse of the market because you're doing deals and you're talking to other people who are doing deals. But then sometimes you walk into a room and then someone says, hey, did you know that this is going for this? It's like, oh, wow. Okay, I wasn't expecting that number or that percentage, that multiplier to kind of be thrown out there. How do you go about working your network to make sure that you are on top of the market, that you got a good sense of what the market can bear, so that when you have someone who's wanting to sell, you actually know what the real price is, or if you have someone wanting to buy, you can kind of advise them, you have $5 million, this is what $5 million will get you. How do you kind of make sure that you're not caught up in a spot where you go, oh, whoop, I kind of misread the market here, and you're able to advise people properly on how best to sell or buy the assets they're looking for?
Yeah, great question. I mean, the button, the airplane seat solves a lot of that as far as being willing to, again, what you were talking about a little bit earlier, meeting people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and seeing kind of what's going on out there in the market. Very, very few states that I've worked in, mandate and require on the mineral deed for you actually put on the deed how much you paid to the seller, although that does exist. Especially in the Appalachian. And so, yeah, I think identifying people that you can see are active in the basin that you're in, and then really cultivating that relationship to the point where, if you've identified that they're, paying the most because they just are, or because they're a public company, or whatever the case might be, really cultivating that relationship to where you can go out there and confidently say, hey, we pay the most in the market, and you get to the point where you're in the project and you have prospective sellers telling you, hey, you guys are just blowing these other firms out of the water. So I don't think it's there's any secret sauce. Although, just kind of identifying and then cultivating those relationships with the capital firms that want to go out there and be maybe aggressive compared to other ones.
I think it's something that maybe people like the three of us and other people, maybe even some listening to the podcast, may take for granted, in the sense that I think it's really valuable to be able to have a truly accurate pulse in the market. But I think the value comes, or at least in my day to day, where I find a lot of value comes in being able to have those honest conversations with mineral owners about, okay, so listen. Yes, I understand. I mean, like, let's say that I was talking to a mineral owner today, right? And so oil just spiked like 12% over the last 48 hours. I think we're trading in like 62, 63 range, which is the most that we've, which is the highest we've been in a long time. And so if I'm talking to them, I'm going to be trying to frame their expectations around, okay, well, yes, that's going on, but here's what's going on behind the scenes. And so I think that's something that but I wanted to hear what you have to say in terms of what are some of the things that you're looking in terms of, I try to educate my customers on the front end. What are some of the things that you may try to do in, kind of trying to get a deal done that kind of differentiates the way that you do something, compared to someone else?
I think there's so many different unique value propositions that you could bring to someone, that it reminds me of what one of the all-star representatives from one of my past firms would say quite a bit. And that was that she had favor with that mineral owner, that they had built that relationship to the point where we closed deals and paid less money than what the competitor was offering because we had favor with them. We had that relationship with them. Now, I'm not talking about like they took $1 million less, but it's still amazing to me that someone would, it's based on that relationship. And, for someone that's thinking, oh, this sounds great, I'm going to go buy minerals and it's going to happen overnight. I mean, it's probably safe to say that almost every deal over $1 million was somewhere in the 7 to 13 month plus range from the first phone call until you're closing the transaction. So there's no, I'm going to go out this week and I'm going to do $50 million worth of business before the end of the year. That could happen, but I think, realistic expectations and really building those relationships organically is the ticket. And that's probably not what most people want to hear.
No, and I think, honestly, it even goes one layer farther than that. I think, the other thing that what it says to me is, Tim, if people like you understand that it takes that level, that length of time to cultivate the relationship, that to me on the back end means that you're also, not going to be the type of, you use the word broker earlier, in one of your answers, I'll use the same term. A lot of these brokers out there, they think that all their job is to forward off an email, just carbon copy exactly what they were sent. And, if that means that they're going to CC 12 straight emails, and they're just going to hit forward 12 times instead of trying to take some time to kind of package something up, kind of to your point on the front end as well. And so I think it also kind of is indicative of the mentality on the other side. So you can kind of use that to your advantage to kind of seek out. One of the things Ryan and I have talked about is red flags and things of that nature. And so I'm curious, kind of in your years of experience, in your experience also, from basin to basin, have you found, or what have you found, I guess, has been different from the deals that you're putting together, on a basin to basin different basis? Has anything keyed into you? Anything different on that front?
I guess at a high level, the appellation is, especially West Virginia, you're looking at a lot of interests that are just on the smaller side, and so it can be more of a grind as far as maybe less quote unquote big deals, 25, 50, 100 acre deals. But also that creates more opportunity on the, 5, 10, 15, 20 acre side of things. The Eagleford, a lot of larger ranches that you still have some larger mineral owners that, whether it's them or someone in the future after they pass, they may consider selling a portion So, maybe opportunities for some bigger deals there. But again, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. One of the guys I had lunch with in Fort Worth a couple months ago, he said, guess how long it's been from the first time we called this guy until the day that we purchased his minerals. I said, how long? And now they weren't talking to him every day or every month, but just whenever they'd circle back around to him. It was 7 years from the first time they talked to him till the day that he, till the transaction closed.
Gotta love the commitment. Gotta love it.
That's not typical, but closing something in a week isn't typical either. And so I think just that life cycle of it, and the Permian, everyone seems to be there. You have a lot of brokers running around, but you also have, I think a sizable amount of end funds that are interested in paying up to a certain extent. So definitely interesting from basin to basin.
Let's take this from the basin to basin perspective from the landowner, and then we'll take it to the corporate side of things. One of the things I had to learn early on was how I presented myself. Probably wasn't what the corporate world wanted, so I had to kind of modify that. But also, if I'm dealing with different people, I had to present myself slightly different to make sure that I'm communicating with them. The more technical the audience is, the more technical terms I try to use, the least technical. How do you walk that balance of, because I don't want to come across fake, I want to be who I am, but I also want to connect with the person I'm talking to. If you're working in the Permian or the Haynesville or the Eagle Ford or the Appalachian, those are all different landowners. How do you walk that balance of not being the cheesy sales guy, but actually being someone who's informative? You're not trying to talk over their heads, you're just trying to communicate with them directly.
Sure. I think it goes back to, I want to be of service to this person. I want to serve this person. And so what questions can I ask so that I know who this person is? Certainly in the Eagle Ford and the Permian, there's times that I put on my boots, my one pair of boots that I have that my business partner gave to me for my birthday as a gift. Same thing maybe in West Virginia. And then, above West Virginia, I'm just kind of wearing dress shoes. So, definitely dressing to be relatable, but also just being yourself. I mean, I not once lied to someone and said that I was from Texas or anything of that sort. And I think as long as you're honest and transparent with people, and more so just respectful of them and their time and the asset that they have. I mean, there's a lot of memories tied up in a lot of the minerals, and, we'd like to partner with them and potentially buy a portion or all of their minerals, but we can't put a price on the family legacy and the family memories that go along with all of that. And so, that's a lot of really getting to know them and being respectful of that through the process.
No, I think that's a good way to end it up here. Unless you've got anything else, Ben, we'll go ahead and begin to land this bird. Tim, it's been a pleasure kind of meeting you offline, and I know we had some emails back and forth last week and whatnot. Let's wrap up with this. Let's help listeners who maybe they're in engineering or sales or whatever. I really want to get into the deal business. I want to make deals. I'll put deals together. Give me 2-3 things that you would say are critical for someone to know if they're going to kind of get into this mineral space. What is it? Lingo? Is it how to connect with people? Is it numbers? Whatever it is, give us a couple of things for folks before we get you out here today.
And Tim, if you want to also throw in some anything 1031 specific as well, I know that's kind of an area for you, and so we'd love to hear about that as well. If you want to
actually, I'm sorry, Ben, you're right. Let's do the 1031. Kind of walk through the 1031 stuff real quick, and then we'll go to that. How about that?
Sure. So the like-kind exchange, if you're selling minerals and there's a qualified list of things that you can roll that money into through an intermediary within a certain time frame and pay zero tax because you're rolling it over into another investment. So I guess that might be number one of 3 would be, take the time to go sit down with a 1031 like-kind exchange professional. They're all over the place, and they're in business to do deals. And so you can take them out to lunch, and they can give you all kinds of information on what size deals are kind of worth the while as far as inappropriate for that and what's not. And, just educate yourself as much as possible on those different strategies that can differentiate yourself from someone just picking up the phone and saying, "Hi, my name's Tim. You want to sell your minerals? No? Okay, bye." I mean, it's just not not a great way to live your life if that's going to be it. Number two, I would say, it's you can sit there and be an analyst and know all the numbers inside and out, but without kind of bringing the current mineral owner together with the capital source, whether that's a fund that you've raised in-house or whether you're partnering with someone. You can sit there all day and do valuations, but if the end capital fund and their model doesn't agree with what you agreed to with the mineral owner, it really doesn't matter. And so really developing those relationships so that you know exactly what your firm can offer to the mineral owner, I think is just hugely important. And beyond being professional and being genuine, just really having an attitude to serve and going out there and putting your best foot forward. Let people know, hey, I don't have the answer for you right now, but I'll find out and get right back to you. And really going arm in arm with people, whether it's a business partner or an employee or a contractor or whatever you need to do, and think of ways to innovate to really kind of take the whole project and the whole process to the next level, because that's what, especially with the digital world, everyone is really looking for, okay, if the world's flat, how can I really use that to my advantage so I can serve my customer better?
I think what you said there just a second ago is important, and sometimes it gets missed. If someone says they have, $10 million, it doesn't matter how sweet the deal is. If it's $13 million, they've got $10 million, and especially if there's someone who's informed you that they're not wanting to bring in partners, they're wanting to do $10 million, and the buyer says that 13 is cheap. Sometimes you see people who are trying to make deals happen that it's just not the right buyer for the seller, and it seems pretty simple, but you'd be surprised at people who pitch deals to folks who don't have the money to buy the deal, and they're not wanting to partner with other people as well. They've said, I want to do this deal myself. This is how much money I've got, and I'm not looking for partners. And then people are trying to pitch them on deals that are outside of their capacity to close a deal. And it's kind of a strange thing when you see that happen.
For sure. And I think, sometimes when a land professional hears the word attorney or accountant or advisor, they kind of are like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to, on a leasing project or right-of-way project, or I don't want to have to deal with this attorney. But really, befriending might not be the right word, but when you have someone that can explain to their client the real benefits and have some influence with them for their own benefit, that can just be huge. And I think it's something to be embraced and not to be avoided or kind of, irritated by, because I think we can all talk for a while about mineral owners that they're not educated, and so they don't have the right information, and it's just they either are undervaluing or overvaluing their minerals. And at the end of the day, they're worth whatever someone's willing to pay for right then. And, it might be a deal, it might not be a deal, but I think that could go a long way in engaging, professionals that maybe they already want to kind of run to help guide through the process, and can be a great asset to both sides of the transaction.
Yeah, no, that's great. Ben and I were working on a deal just the other day. It was a surface deal, and we had gotten a report that someone had offered, we'll just say $1,000 an acre, keep the math easy, but the current market rate is $900, and these are properties with huge amount of acreage. And it didn't really matter that we couldn't confirm that the person got paid $1,000. The neighbor got paid $1,000 or not. But even if we could, it wouldn't really matter, because the current market valuation was $100 per acre below that. And it wasn't like a 2-acre deal. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of acres, so the math gets pretty substantial. But yeah, educate folks on that is right, without trying to feel like you're undercutting them or work them down on a price. And that's kind of that balance. But Tim, this has been great. Glad we got you on. It's been nice to connect with you offline and chat with you. Any final things before we let you out here today?
I really appreciate the time and the opportunity. And I mean, just think outside the box about ways that you can really convey information that, it's not all about you. It might be the 3 mineral owners that just had such a great experience with you, and they're willing to talk to this prospective seller and say, hey, Ben did a really great job with me, and I really recommend him, and kind of put people at ease for whatever reason that they just, don't trust anyone, or, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it's not all about Ben. That's good to hear too. Thank you. Ben needs to hear as well. So I'm glad we got that in there before we got you off the show. Tim, thank you again. Where can folks connect with you if they want to reach out, talk to you, learn more about you?
Yeah, pretty much everything out there. Best way is probably LinkedIn under Timothy Kotzman, or JubileeRoyalty.com.
Okay. We'll make sure Nate links to that in the show notes. Tim, thank you so much for your time today, sir.
Appreciate the time, Tim. Thank you.
All right.
It was good getting on Tim. Had a good discussion with him the other day offline, and good to get him on the podcast. Ben, any takeaways, anything? Obviously you're a Grandmaster level 15 Jedi on this stuff, so, I'm the young, I'm not even a Padawan learner yet. You told me the other day I'm like a youngling, so not even quite Padawan learner status. So for you, is there anything that you learned? I learned a lot. I don't know about you.
I don't even know anymore whether you're giving me a compliment, or it's an underhanded diss, or an overt diss, or you've done a good job. I'll say that. I think the goal here was to confuse me, and if that was the goal, mission accomplished. You've done well, sir. That being said, I thought it was fantastic. One of the things I really admire about Tim, and I really love, is the way that he goes about what he does, and the relationship is first and foremost, and he has confidence that the rest will kind of fall into place, which, if you've been listening to the other episodes, may sound somewhat familiar with some of the things that you and I have talked about, Ryan. I thought that was fantastic. If you have a chance to reach out to Tim, definitely do so. He told me offline, we didn't get a chance to talk about it on the podcast, on the podcast today, but he told me offline that he's more than happy to be a sounding board, talk about an idea, and so if you have something that you want to reach out to him about, feel free to send him a LinkedIn message and follow up with him on that. I thought it was really great.
Yeah, and I would like to see, obviously happy to have him on sooner, but in 2 years, I think he had a 2-year lease in New York. I would love to see in 2 years what his perception is of New York and how that's changed, because he's someone who's going to be networking, he's going to be working his network, and he's probably going to come across people who have different financial models than he's used to, have a different interest in things, and they see things different. And when you're dealing with the money side of things, that's the thing. Money is not monolithic. Everyone has money. They have, if you go back to the shell boom, Aubrey McClendon was just blowing through it to buy up everything he could. Everyone didn't subscribe to that model, and that's how money works. And so I'm curious to see, as he goes through these next 2 years, how the money side thing plays out for him, what connections he makes, and is it different, or is it kind of similar? Obviously, the money's got to make sense. There's kind of some, generic things you can expect from money folks, but there will be different interests. There will be things that wet people's whistle, so to speak, that will be different, I would imagine, from a New York capital investment firm than someone out in Midland, Texas.
Absolutely. Ryan, before we wrap up today, I'm curious, we don't generally cover news on the podcast, but this week I thought it was somewhat notable. A couple of newsworthy things happened, but specifically T. Boone Pickens passed away this week. I was curious if you had any commentary on that specifically. Nothing else other than that.
Yeah, it was obviously a sad day. I need to go back and look. I feel like I saw a headline within the last year that T. Boone said he was either retiring or semi-retiring. And that kind of caught me off guard, because he had said for so long he wasn't retiring. That was his big thing, because he's afraid that he would kind of retire and die like some people do. And so I want to say I had saw a headline, or maybe he closed down a business and he was getting too old to run it. So whenever that was, I can't remember the exact phrasing of what happened. I kind of had wondered if the end might be getting closer than I don't know T. Boone personally, so I don't know. But I kind of wondered that. So I don't want to say I was like at the insider track or anything, but that had been playing in my mind, because I knew he was big on basically working as long as you can, and for the most part, he seemed to do that. So he's a legend in the industry. I
figured he would have been in the Rolodex just a phone call away.
My lawyer advised me not to comment on that at this time.
Lawyer's a smart man. He's a smart man.
Smart man. Ben Samuels, we've made it to 10. The question now is, what's the next milestone here? Is it 11? Is it 15? Is it 20? Is it 30? What's the next milestone? We made it to 10. People doubted us. We doubted us. We were like Sonny Bono and Chick.
You know what, Ryan? I'm calling it now. We got to 10. We got double digits. You know what? We're getting to triple digits at least. So we buckle in. We're in for it. Let's go.
That might be more depressing than T-Bone passing away. That news. So wow, shots fired.
Do you guys see this? Do you hear this? Do you see what I subject myself to on a weekly basis to bring you this?
Yeah. Ben, anything else before we get here today, sir?
No.
Listeners, thank you so much. Ben might be. You watch the video. It's a kind of a mess. I'm in my new studio office. Back there somewhere will be where I'll be next week, hopefully, if Nate comes through, which I think he will this time. Ben, are you going to be here live in person next week? We talked loosely. I don't know what your schedule is. So I'm not putting you on the spot. I know you kind of teased that idea, but is that a reality or?
Aren't you a week early? Isn't it 2 weeks from now?
No, it's next week.
You mean like? Oh, you don't. So yeah. Yeah.
Math is hard. 7 days.
For some reason I keep thinking it's Friday today. Don't ask me why. Let's not talk about it. It's for those listening, by the way, it's a Monday.
Hey, I will say this. Yeah, I will say this in your defense. Recording podcasts on Monday is really hard because you want to say I talked to everyone. This, like you told Tim, I talked to you earlier this week, and I kind of chuckled because that's what you want to say because it's really last week. But when you record podcasts on Monday, everything feels like it's a Friday. So it's part of the podcasting on Monday deal.
So you've done this to me. I see. Okay.
You're welcome.
Well, I don't think I said thank you. I don't even know where I was going with that.
You're trying to ramble on about maybe you will, maybe you won't be in the studio next week.
Oh, that's right. I will be in the studio when we record. Wait, no, I won't because I don't get to Dallas until like that Tuesday anyways. So no, I won't unless we record on Tuesday because I don't get to Dallas until the 24th.
I'll be next Tuesday on the Jackie Daily Show on the Blaze Network, so I will not be here, but that's okay. Listeners, thank you so much. We will be back possibly for episode 11. We'll see. Until then, keep coming.